Hey guys, it's Paul, combat veteran, MMA fighter, YouTuber, and today we are checking out Orks by the Templin Institute. Let's get into it.
Oi, you gits. Shut your gob and get your listening gear around this sogging announcement. The problem with this channel is there's too much learning and not enough fighting. Luckily, the boss is the solution to all this namby-pamby mucking about on Twitch.
There we go. Okay. Now, for those of you that know me and my channel, you know I love doing tactical analysis, maybe even a little bit of over-analysis. So the Orks, I expect to give me an absolute heart attack because as what I do know about the Orks is that they are not known for their tactical cunning. They are mostly just smashing machines.
In the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, there is only war. Each day on a million worlds, armies clash in an eternity of carnage and slaughter to the laughter of thirsting gods. Across the galaxy, disparate forces muster their fleets in the grim hope that one day, victory might be claimed for the Emperor, the ruinous powers, the greater good, or 1,000 other lost causes. Most fail to...
I appreciate that they consider every objective that anyone is fighting for in 40k as a lost cause. Chaos is not fighting for a lost cause, I believe. Since they keep resurrecting, by definition, they'll win eventually.
To realize that the universe in which they exist will not suffer any lasting triumph. Another day's survival is all that can be achieved. In this galaxy hostile to every form of civilization, only one has managed to not only endure, but thrive. They are the most successful race encountered by man, seemingly built for war in every aspect. They are crude, savage, and possess only a low cunning. But while the great works of races 1,000 times more advanced lay in ruins, the ramshackle designs of the Orks thunder onward. Orc physiology is fascinating, terrifying, and contradictory in equal measure. They exist as a complex interweaving of two symbiotic organisms that somehow have been genetically linked. One strain is akin to any number of terrestrial animals found across the galaxy, while the other is a type of fungus, which prevails throughout an individual orc's bloodstream and skin.
Okay, I actually did not know this about the Orks. I really thought they were just a fungus through and through.
The animalistic component of their biology carries the genetic information for an orc's subspecies, while the fungus seems to possess the genetic information of the entire race. This latter aspect exhibits many other curious properties, including some kind of ingrained genetic memory or knowledge, a type of biosynthesis, a latent psychic ability, and the capacity to quickly recover from injury.
Yeah, I don't know if there is any animal on Earth that is even approximate analog to this sort of thing. The closest example maybe would be like mitochondrial DNA, which is a subset of DNA that sits in the mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell, thank you 8th grade. And it is like matrilineal, so you trace it through mothers because of the chromosome that it resides on, and you can somehow get a really, really clear picture of like a person's genetic lineage through that, separate from their regular DNA, but that's probably not even close to what they're talking about here.
Their ability to withstand tremendous punishment is the defining characteristic of the Orc race. They feel surprisingly little pain, even when horrifically injured, and can recover from nearly any type of wound. Orcs that have been literally cut apart have been known to survive when stitched back together, and beheaded orcs, whose heads were then attached back on their own or another's body, have been able to fully recover as well.
I mean, let's be honest here. The thing that's most impressive is that obviously when they made 40k, they really wanted to take the Tolkien high fantasy orcs and bring them into the far future. And they did. And then, of course, they kept having to, I imagine, retcon lore and lore and lore to provide a pseudoscientific explanation as to why something as preposterous and insane as the orcs can exist in sort of the grim, gothic world of 40k, which I love.
While any other species would weaken or tire when subjected to constant physical harm over a prolonged period of time, the opposite appears true for the orcs. They can survive grievous wounds with little apparent long-term consequences, save some superficial scarring, and instead seem to develop physically the more damage they are able to endure. The average orc stands much taller than a man, although their typical hunched stance makes this not readily apparent. Orcs will grow all their lives, and a particularly skillful orc will continue to become larger and stronger until they are beaten or killed. Orc reproduction remains barely understood, but
so one of the things that it is really interesting, that the orcs and the Tyranids are two factions that when they fight, they can grow stronger in lore. Tyranids through the acquisition of biomass, and of course orcs through the sort of stimulus of combat incentivizing them to grow larger. However, they cannot get around physics, and just like trying to gain weight as, say, an MMA fighter looking to move up a weight class, you have to have energy inputs. And again, if you're a fungus, you've got to draw nutrients from somewhere. You can't conjure size out of whole cloth. You can't conjure it out of nothing. You have to have some sort of food source, nutrients, minerals, some sort of raw material to not just grow yourself, but you also run into the problem of just energy expenditure. You can have millions and millions of orcs, but just metabolic processes, let alone the extremely vigorous act of fighting, burns energy. And you just can't get around the physics of the fact that it burns energy and you have to put some energy back into the system. Again, maybe lore experts in lore, is there some sort of explanation for this? Like, do squigs or another food source rely on like photosynthesis? Or are they able to feed on almost any biological matter, a la the Tyranids, or even a la a Space Marine that can kind of eat anything with his extra stomach. Let me know how if lore has addressed this sort of glaring hole in metabolic process.
Revolves around a kind of fungal spore. If left undisturbed, entirely self-sufficient communities of orcs can arise from these spores years or even decades after their predecessors were defeated or driven away. Like the extragalactic Tyranids, the orcoid race resembles an ecosystem composed of various subspecies arranged in a brutal hierarchy. Colloquially, these component species are referred to as greenskins. The first and least complex form of orc life to gestate are squigs. Squigs are themselves comprised of various subtypes used by higher forms of orc life for nearly every purpose. Oil squigs secrete a viscous black lubricant used to keep orc machinery functioning. Mending squigs can be used to suture limbs back in place, while facebiter squigs are little more than ravenous drooling mouths on legs and kept by orc warlords as a symbol of status. Other forms of squig life include parasite hunting squigs, bag squigs, and the rare and bizarre squig pipe, utilized as a musical instrument.
This is great. I appreciate the fact that they're trying to take this seriously when in fact orcs are hands down the most ridiculous faction ever. I mean, I know that they were engineered by the old ones to fight the Necrons, and the old ones, orcs are evidence that the old ones must have had some sense of humor, because a pipe squig, a pig that's a musical instrument, that's unbelievable. That's awesome. I love it.
The most common squig is the eaten squig, a limbless blob that feeds on orc refuse, which is in turn consumed by higher orc species. Feared above all is the Squiggoth, which range in size from that of a main battle tank to the titans used by the Collegia Titanica. Next to emerge are Snotlings. Far too scrawny and weak to bear weapons and lacking the violent tendencies of their larger brethren, Snotlings instead cultivate the large patches of fungi that spread wherever orcs multiply. They provide food, drink, and medicine to the orc race, and possess a natural affinity for Squigs, which they raise and then train. In battle,
Squigs. I'm still not over the Squigs, man. So if that's their food source, but they live off orc refuse, then like you do have an actual like enclosed system problem. It's just like when you have those little bugs that live in an enclosed terrarium. The terrarium can last a long time, but it can't last forever. You run into just, again, a closed system problem of the fact that you can, those closed systems receive energy from photosynthesis, but at some point they're just going to run out of additional biomatter to work with, right? No terrarium lasts forever.
a Snotling's only use is that of ammunition, fired from a cruel device known as the shock attack gun. Immediately above the Snotlings in the greenskin hierarchy are the Gretchen, or Grots. Of all the orc subspecies, they display the greatest capacity for cunning. They are fast learners and quick to spot an opportunity or weakness. Within any orc tribe, most serve as laborers, scouts, thieves, or even assassins.
And the Snotlings are just ammunition once they've finished raising the Squigs.
The Gretchen's instinct for self-preservation borders on a rudimentary sixth sense, although this is often not enough to prevent them from being forced into serving as living shields, minesweepers, or emergency rations.
God, ridiculous.
The above-average intelligence of the Gretchen has led to the emergence of an underground economy within their normally orc-dominated society. Many Gretchen operate their own black market businesses, selling fungus beer, roasted squigs, or gambling enterprises. The level of sophistication present in these enterprises is almost unknown elsewhere in the Greenskin civilization, and enables the Gretchen to enjoy relatively comfortable lives, while still existing as slaves to their larger masters.
This is just preposterous. I have almost no good commentary. I mean, ridiculous.
These subspecies endure a symbiotic relationship with their orc overseers, trading menial tasks in exchange for protection. Within the orcs themselves, the social hierarchy is straightforward and brutal. They will instinctively obey those larger than themselves, and while some might rise to prominence through cunning or deception, most seize power and retain it through the application of brute force. At the head of every orc horde is a war boss or warlord, typically the biggest and meanest of his kind, who has risen through the ranks to primacy by winning battles and killing any other challengers.
Okay, I just want to point out that while the orcs seem a bit rougher around the edges, it's not really fundamentally different than human politics. The person who is the most cunning, the most brutal, the most willing to crush their rivals is the one that ends up on top. And the orcs do the exact same thing, and frankly, it's sort of refreshing that they're so honest about it.
First and foremost a powerful warrior, the war boss will hold absolute authority in his tribe or warband. The decisions of the war boss are enforced by a crude ruling caste of orcs known as knobs. A type of nobility amongst the orcs by the loosest definition of the word, the knobs have earned a position of prominence due to their greater than average size and strength. All others in an orc tribe are referred to as boys. Depending on their specialty in combat, they may be known as sluggaboys, shootaboys, ardboys, wild boys or fly boys, while any orc intelligent enough to recognize which part of a grenade is thrown once the pin is removed is known as a stick bomber.
Also, somebody pointed out in another video that orcs are the only faction where there's no need to create euphemisms for their units, right? Almost every other faction, their unit has an official name and then something you would refer to it as. But the orcs, I mean, one of the units on the tabletop is literally boys in a truck.
A cast of specialists also exists within the boys. Orcs who have been born with specific information programmed into their minds that are released once they reach maturity. These so-called odd boys include pain boys or mad docs, who use their stabby bits as medical tools. The crude bionics that are sometimes implanted in higher-ranking orc are the work of pain boys, although their work in this area has the tendency to explode without warning. Psychers too exist within.
You know, the funny thing is, at least to me, is that, like, in a lot of ways, the orcs are like a reflection of the worst parts of the Imperium. In the same way that the Imperium, like, crudely sort of stitches together their technology from what little they know and doesn't do any actual, like, research, as do the orcs, right? They just sort of cobble things together from what they have already knowledge of, and just sort of hope it works and don't get particularly upset when it doesn't.
The orc race, referred to as weird boys. Unlike those in other races, these weird boys draw upon the innate psychic potential of the orc species itself, rather than the energies of the warp. This type of psychic power has its own dangers, however. Should a weird boy soak up too much of this energy, his head may explode, and the resulting backlash also explode the heads of any orcs nearby.
Yeah, the orcs seem to have a theme of self-destruction. But again, they seem to be more straightforward about it than the Imperium.
Mech boys, or mechaniacs, serve as engineers and technicians who build all the weapons, vehicles, and other technology used by the orc race. Like every other advanced process associated with the greenskins, their work is notorious for suddenly exploding.
You know, it'd be easier if they just told me what parts of orc physiology and culture were not going to spontaneously explode. It seems like it'd be a shorter list.
Technology is one of the least understood facets of their civilization. It is almost always ramshackle and slapped together, yet functions as well or better than anything comparable within other species. The impossible nature of orc technology is believed to be a result of their latent psychic powers. If enough orcs believe something is true, it will actually become so, brought into existence through pure will. As such, orc rockets painted yellow create bigger explosions, orc vehicles painted red will go faster, and orc guns are often nothing more than a box with bolts and bits of metal in it.
I mean, this is the best part. That's the best part of the orcs. You know, as people have pointed out, the orcs' sincerely held belief that the god of the Umis is really strong may actually be sustaining the Emperor.
Technology, such as it is the result of a constant stream of poorly thought out experimentation and attempts to constantly outdo the competition. It is usually as deadly to its operators as to the enemy, and countless orcs have died in the pursuit of building the biggest, fastest, or meanest weaponry. This simplistic and brutal approach is reflected in every aspect of what they call.
Yeah, these guys are almost like a parody of the Imperium, right? They're like the worst facets of humanity and the Imperium sort of turned in on itself. Again, their willingness to completely throw away lives for almost trivial, meaningless gain is, yeah, a very, like, Imperium thing to do.
Culture. Questions regarding the nature of the universe that have led entire civilizations to corruption and ruin never occur to orcs in the first place. They have but one philosophy: might makes right, and not one orc has ever doubted this for a single moment. This unshakable self-belief is likely the most dangerous quality of the orcs. For them, The universe is a very simple and straightforward place, free of the angst and worry that plagues most other races. Orcs have little recognition for concepts like fate or destiny, and are not frustrated when their plans fail.
I mean, this just continues to get more insane and absurd. Does this constitute like a dark mirror of the Imperium? I think so. I think the lack of self-reflection is definitely a sort of like dark mirror on the Imperium, which also loves more than anything else to continue to do things exactly as they've always been done, with very little self-reflection or consideration on how to be better. Robot girly man notwithstanding.
Instead, they just try again, usually in a different way after forgetting how they attempted it the first time. Never does an orc reflect on their own weakness, instead making remarkable progress through bloody trial and error. As long as an orc has someone to fight, someone bigger to tell him who to kill next, and someone smaller to abuse, he will know contentment. War and killing are their only real motivation.
I mean, sounds like the world of 40k is like orc heaven.
The one exception being the desire to possess even bigger and louder weapons or vehicles. Orcs are almost always engaged in a torrent of bloodshed and mindless violence, sometimes against the other races of the galaxy, but typically amongst themselves. Usually these conflicts are smaller scale or localized, and never develop beyond random outbursts of violence and looting. Sometimes, however, should a particularly skilled war boss achieve a string of successes, orcs will flock to his banner to share in his victories. Once this orc population reaches a form of critical mass, a WOG might be declared. Part military campaign and part migration, a WOG is a war on an apocalyptic scale. Orcs beyond counting swarm from one continent to the next, and eventually from world to world. As tales of the WOG spread, more Orc clans will rush to join, while any potential challengers are either defeated and their clan subsumed, or they will take control of the WOG themselves. As this campaign gains more and more momentum, the disparate clans within grow more unified until they represent an unstoppable force on the galactic stage.
Oof, the Tau. The Tau are very small, and a WOG sounds very large. And it's sort of surprising. In lore, has the Tau had to go up against a WOG at any point? And how did that go for them? It seems like it would not go well.
These WOGs rarely possess any clear objective, seeking only to unleash as much carnage as possible across the universe. Within Orc culture, a WOG...
I mean, again, what's the point of a lot of the Imperium's wars? They just seem to be stalling actions or just attacking Xenos because Xenos shouldn't exist. It's an interesting lens to view the orcs as like the worst aspects of the Imperium manifest.
WOG is the ultimate expression of their twin gods, Gork, who is brutal but cunning, and Mork, who is cunning but brutal.
I just give the narrator credit for saying all this with a straight face.
While they may seem identical to outsiders, Gork is said to be the god of clobbering, smashing, and killing, while Mork is the god of clobbering, smashing, and killing, while an enemy's back is turned. Orcs exist in every corner of the universe, and there is no environment too extreme for them to not only survive, but flourish. They have been discovered on toxic death planets, depressurized orbital platforms, drifting ice floes, irradiated asteroid fields, inside corrosive swamps, or on lightless nightmare worlds seething with horrific predators. Even in the bombed-out remains of planets subjected to exterminatus, orcs can sometimes be found, and there are rumors of orc enclaves hidden within the Eye of Terror itself.
Yeah, definitely feel like the Imperium could definitely fuck with a lot of their enemies by just sending a quantity of orcs like deep into their world, right? Just kind of slip into their territory, right? infect some relatively deserted planet with some orc fungi, and then just dip out and wait 25, 30 years when their enemies turn around and realize, oh, wow, the orcs own an entire planet and are about to launch a WOG on our undefended, center or rear area.
These holdings vary from pirate outposts that prey on merchant shipping to system-spanning orc empires inhabited by tens of trillions of greenskins. These are normally divided into clans and tribes. Clans are massive groups of orcs who share an enduring philosophical viewpoint on greenskin life.
Ah, so there is some philosophical work.
While tribes are much less stable, constantly breaking apart and reforming. A single tribe might include orcs from many different clans, but for the most part, an individual orc's allegiance is to his war boss above his clan. While it can be difficult to distinguish all the orc clans, generally there are 6 that are truly widespread and found in almost every tribe in the galaxy. The Bad Moons, Blood Axes, Death Skulls, Evil Suns, Goths, and Snakebites. It is the dream.
Their names are only marginally less cheesy, more cheesy rather, than many of the Space Marine chapters. The Snakebites, the Salamanders, seems like a wash.
Of every aspirant war boss to one day unite the clans and tribes and usher in an even greater era of slaughter across the galaxy. Many have come close. Clawjaw, the mighty mangler of Bork, Tuska, the demon killer, Snagrod, the arch arsonist, and Nazdrag Ugg Erdgrub.
Just the names. I just can't handle this.
Above them all, however, is the self-proclaimed prophet of the WOG, known to the Imperium as the Beast of Armageddon, Goswolthraka. The single most influential orc in the galaxy, Goswolthraka believes himself to be the instrument of Gork and Mork, destined to lead the greatest WOG of all time. This is, in part, due to the work of Mad Dog Grotznik, whose cybernetic enhancements have supposedly allowed Thraka to speak to the great green gods of the orcs directly.
This is insane. This is the most ridiculous faction I've ever encountered.
Again and again, Gazkul has unleashed his followers against the Imperium of Man, or come to the aid of the Octarius Empire in their fight against the Tyranids. But as the time of ending approaches and the great rift of chaos spreads across the galaxy, it is clear that Goswolthraka has his sights on a higher calling. Across every Orc clan and tribe, rumors abound that Gazgul will soon proclaim the Ragnarok, a time...
The Ragnarok. Jesus Christ. This is the most insane... This almost makes you unable to take the rest of the 40k universe, even a little seriously. It's impressive that you can have one faction that's just bad puns.
Time when every orc shall rise up to conquer the galaxy. In untold numbers, orcs have already started their migration towards the key battles of the Great WOG, and should Ragnarok finally be declared, there may be no force in the galaxy strong enough to withstand it.
All right. Wow. That was the orcs. Yeah. I can offer you no meaningful tactical insight other than this one truism, that quantity has a quality all its own. And that seems to be true of the orcs. Size and firepower and numbers, they're actually pretty effective all told. And it's not like the Imperium's, using any super ultra brilliant strategic choices. All right, guys. Wow, that is it. Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to check out the merch shop, right? Rocking the merch here. I've got this stuff, and I've got a whole bunch of new designs that are already for sale that I'll be wearing here as they start coming in. And check out the second channel. Check out the Instagram. And until next time, I will see you guys later.